name's Lindsay Yeagle. I am the Education Program Coordinator at the University of Chicago Celiac Disease Center. And I regularly do cooking segments because I'm also a classically trained chef. So today we're going to do an apple pie. And it's mostly about the crust, of course, because everybody can kind of come up with the filling for an apple pie, but I'll get to that part too. But we're going to focus first on the crust of the apple pie. Now, that being said, there's nothing wrong with going to the store and buying an already made gluten-free pie crust. There's a few options out there. I use them regularly. It saves time and they're good. They're definitely good. And so don't hesitate to just do that. Go to the frozen section, buy your pie crust, and fill it how you want that way. But we're gonna do a homemade pie crust today. And it's not my recipe. I'm sharing one that I happen to like very well. It's in this book. It's by Katerina Cermelj, well, I'll spell it, C-E-R-M-E-L-J. And it's called Baked to Perfection. Everything in here is gluten-free. I use her cookbook as well as her website for a lot of recipes. They're very good. I haven't had a single one that wasn't successful, and you would never know they were gluten-free. So anyhow, online she goes by Loopy Whisk. And so you can find her recipes in this cookbook as well as on her website. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna do one of her recipes because it's very, very good. And if you follow us on social media, you'll see that oftentimes recipes that we put on social media that are baked things tend to be hers. We reference Loopy Whisk and send it to her website pretty regularly. Very reliable. Anyhow, so this is it. We're gonna use this cookbook and I'm gonna follow along on the directions in there, and we're gonna put together a pie crust. It's a process, it takes some time, there's some refrigeration in between steps, things like that. Things have to be very, very chilled, like the butter has to be very cold. I just took it out of the fridge. Water has to be same, very cold. So anyhow, let's get started. We're gonna start with combining, and I'm gonna be looking at this as we go because I don't have it memorized. So we're gonna start with combining our flour, sugar, xanthan gum. So the flour that I'm using is a mix that you just buy pre-made. There's a lot of them on the market. You know, anything that you already know you like, that you've used before, will be fine for this recipe. This mix that I'm using does contain xanthan gum already. A lot of them do. It's actually harder to find one that doesn't have xanthan gum in it. So if yours already has xanthan gum in it, we'll still add xanthan gum. We'll just add less than we would if our recipe, or if our mix did not have xanthan gum. So if there's no xanthan gum, then you're gonna add a little bit more. So it really just depends on which kind of flour mix you're choosing. So to that, we're gonna add the sugar. I have everything all pre-measured. She uses weights when she's putting together her recipes. And that's actually in baking technically what you should do. That's best, that you go by weights. So for example, her recipes go by grams. So the flour amount was 375 grams. I weighed it all, got it all ready before we started this so that you wouldn't have to watch that. So that's the flour mix, the sugar I just put in, the xanthan gum is here, and we'll get that all in there. And then next is some salt. Now, I happen to already have salted butter here. So because my butter's salted, I'm only gonna add the smallest amount, little pinch of salt to mine. If you're using unsalted butter, then you'll add the amount that she calls for. Anyhow, so that's that. Sorry to turn my back. I did not get a fork out. So this I'm gonna mix with a fork at this point, just to combine those things that I just put in there. And then the next step is to actually add the butter. It's a lot of butter, that's how you get the flakiness for a pie crust. And we're gonna do this kind of, it's already cubed into, you know, small little 1/2-inch cubes right around there. So we're actually gonna sort of toss these in individually, get them coated in the flour. And then where this starts to come together and form the flakiness that you want, sorry, this takes a little time to add these in kind of individually. And I'm gonna toss them and get them coated and get those ones out of the way, and then be able to add in some more. Anyhow, and you can see I'm just tossing them in like that, and then coating them, and then kind of moving them over to the side out of the way to toss in my next ones. I want to get them a little bit coated in the flour, because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to kind of press each of these into a flat piece of butter, and I'll show you when I get to that point. But again, it does take a minute to just get them all a little bit coated. Next batch in here. Anyhow, we're almost there. It's actually 250 grams of butter cut into these cubes, and 250 grams of butter is actually a little bit over 2 sticks. So it is a lot of butter that goes into this to get that flakiness that we're looking for. Okay, that's it. I've got all the butter in. Get that out of the way. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to work kind of quickly, and you can see I'm actually pressing that very flat, and I'm going to toss it right back in. Press it flat, put it back in. So the key here is that we get these really thin layers of butter all throughout the flour mix. So it takes a little time, and we're going to go through and we're going to press all these nice and flat, and then I'll show you from there what we're going to do once we get them all flat. Okay, so I'm back, and I have it all coming together. We're at the last little couple of turns here, but it's come together nicely. Sorry, my dog's here. Anyhow, so it has come together nicely. In the process, of course, the butter smooths out, but there's still large pieces in it that you can see, and we'll make that nice flaky crust. So what we do now is we just form it into a cylinder and put it into the fridge to rest for about 30 minutes. After it's in the refrigerator, everything cools off again. We want that butter to get nice and cold again. Then we'll get it back out and we'll work it. So that's what I'm doing now. Okay, so I'm back now, and my pie crust, the dough for my pie crust, has been in the refrigerator for 30 minutes chilling. So we're going to unwrap that, and what we're going to do is what's referred to as a lamination process. So this is a floured surface. I just took some of my flour, sprinkled it down so that the crust doesn't stick the dough. you're gonna watch me work this process, and you'll see what I'm doing as I go. But one of the biggest things I want to accomplish is getting this out into kind of a long rectangle. So it'll be narrow here and long this way. And that's what I'm going for, because the lamination process requires me to do some folds. So I can do the folds better once I get that kind of a shape going. So that's what I'm going for right now. And of course, all along the process, we're gonna make sure that it's not sticking. So I'm gonna keep getting our flour. Bring it a little bit closer. I'm just kind of sprinkling it around because I know I'm gonna need to bring it into the mix as I go here. And because it was refrigerated, it's stiff at this point, so it takes a little finessing, and we don't want it to crumble as we go. So I'm sort of rolling, but also pressing the shape a bit. There we go. Now we're getting there. And you take your time. My best tip is take your time. This isn't a process you want to rush through. Making a pie crust is, even if it's a traditional pie crust, it still takes some time to do. But once you add the gluten-free aspect, you know, that means you really do have to take some time with it. I'm gonna give it a flip, and I'm gonna work on this side a little bit too, because it's kind of cracked. Again, we're working with very cold dough, so it's a bit of a process. And I can see through it the chunks of butter still, which is exactly what we want. That butter in there in those chunks, because that's what makes that nice flaky crust. So again, I'm just working it, trying to keep it together without cracking. Here we go. That's good. We're making some progress there. And again, we're trying to keep that rectangle shape, because that's what we're going to need as we go here to do our folds. There. It doesn't have to be a perfect rectangle. Don't get too hung up on that. You can see that mine is far from perfect. I do have a good size crack in there, so I'm just gonna kind of piece that back together. It's workable dough, you know, it's nice and cold, so it gives you some ability to kind of form and mold it a bit, which is really helpful. Okay, so there's that. And now I'm gonna turn it, like I said, we want it this direction, so that then we gently go over here into thirds and over here, okay? So now what we have are some layers. Right there, you can see 1, 2, 3 layers. Layers equal flakiness, and we're sort of helping a gluten-free crust get some flakiness that it doesn't naturally get on its own very well. So that's that. Once we fold it that way, we're gonna roll it again. Still going for that same shape. Stop and work it a little bit. The middle always wants to roll out nicer than the ends, so it flattens out in that middle part before we're really ready for it to with the ends. So I'm just trying to even that up a bit. And those layers are still there. I know you can't see it, but they are definitely still there. They don't get rolled completely out of it. And that's what we want. We want those layers to stay. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep doing the rolling and folding method, probably about 4 times, and then we give it a spin. So every time we do that fold, we spin it. A little underneath here, it's dry now. Here we go. Okay, so I'll keep working on that, the rolling and spinning. I've done 2 so far. Here, this will be my 3rd one we're going to do now. again, it's far from perfect. You can see my ends are wider than the middle. It's fine. We're mostly worried about the layering of it right now, not the actual size of it. The size doesn't matter yet because we're not putting it into a pie pan yet. So here we go. There's our third. I'm gonna again bring some of that flour into the middle so that my crust isn't sticking. Okay. This will be my fourth, and I think 4 is probably enough. I mean, you could do 5 or 6, but I really think that you're going to accomplish the layering nicely with 4. So that's what I'm going to do. If you make it and you feel like you need a little bit more of a layering, feel free to go further than 4. Okay, so this is my final one. That actually turned out pretty even, which was great. Okay, let's dust that again. Okay, so now what we do is we actually leave it like this. Let me double check. Okay, so yes, we're gonna wrap this now in cling wrap, which we already have. It's right here in front of here. So we're gonna wrap it back up, just as it is, that fold. And then we're gonna go ahead and refrigerate it again. And then it'll be ready for us to roll out into our pie crust shape. And this is enough for the bottom and also a top if you wanna do a top. So you've got the option to actually make your pie with the top crust, lattice, whatever you wanna do. So this will be enough for a double crust pie. So I'm gonna go ahead and chill this, and then we'll get back to it, and we'll actually roll it out and make the apple pie filling. So that's what's coming next. Okay, so we are back with our pie dough here. It's been in the refrigerator chilling, and now we're gonna work on rolling it out. Okay, so let's see. So this actually makes a top and a bottom crust. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna just split it in half. You can use a knife, you can use a pastry cutter, whatever you have. We're going to work with one portion at a time. This is lightly floured. So now we roll it out so that it fits into our pie pan. And it takes a little time. You want to work it slowly. It is hard from being in the fridge. And I'm just going to keep turning and rolling, trying to keep it nice and even as we go. Gather up some of that flour for a minute again. There we go. Just keep spinning, rolling it out until it's the size we need it for our pie pan. And it's not sticking. I mean, you can see it's moving nicely. Really nice and workable. And this one, we want to be big enough to come up the sides. So we'll just use this to get our rough measurements. We're actually getting pretty close. Okay, so now is the trickiest part of this, transferring it into the pan. Loosen it up. It's delicate, so the transfer might not be the prettiest you've ever seen, but we'll get it. Oh, that went pretty well. Okay, so you can see that this dough is quite maneuverable. And then we just gently lift these edges, let it sort of fall down into the pan. We'll have extra that we'll cut off, and then we'll shape the rest. But you can see how nicely that works. Okay, remove some of this extra on these ends. And I don't make pies much, so you're going to see that my edges aren't going to be as pretty as some people's that make pies regularly and really have a good system in place. That's not me. Anyhow, so now I start to kind of press it in the pan nicely against the sides. Pulling off some extra, and then we're going to kind of fold it under. Give us a little something to work with along these edges to make it nice. Just tucking that under. And I'll come back and make it prettier after I get it all folded nicely. If you have spots that are thinner, you can always take some of this that you removed from another spot and just tuck it in there. Got a little thin spot there that I want to thicken up, and then we'll fix it, get around and shape it. Okay, so my fingernails may get in the way. There's another little thin spot I'm going to add some to. Do sort of a push on this side, and you're pushing your fingers into each other to get the little fluted edge. Like I said, mine are always quite rustic looking because I don't do them often, and that's fine with me. It's homemade after all. Almost around the edge. Now, if you were making this for, say, a pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving, then you would blind bake your crust, which basically means poking some holes in, putting weights in, baking it in the oven to crisp it up before you add your filling. Anyhow, so that's our bottom. Again, a little rustic. I don't do this much, but you get the idea. Now the next thing we're going to do is, I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to mix up the apple pie filling. I've pre-cut my apples. It's 3 pounds. 3 pounds of apples in there. And we're going to add 2/3 a cup of sugar and 2 tablespoons of flour, and we're just using our all-purpose gluten-free flour, and then 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and I have some melted butter. I'm going to grab that. Just 1 minute. Okay, so I have my melted butter here. I'm going to go ahead and add that into the apples. And then we'll mix it all together. And get that flour all mixed through it. So what happens is the juice comes out of those apples. The flour that we have in there thickens it. So it's not too liquidy as we do this. Okay, so then that gets poured into the crust, and it'll be very full, very, very full. And again, those apples were peeled, cored, sliced, right around maybe 1/4 of an inch That's the slice size, give or take. And this will be, again, it'll be really full because these apples cook down. So it looks kind of almost ridiculously full at this point. But it'll all cook down. And then it'll look more normal when it's done. But you kind of want to overfill it at this point. Okay. All right. So next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to roll out the top part of the crust. You could do a lattice top. You can do, you know, whatever fancy thing you prefer. That's absolutely fine. I did reflour this surface, so you want to make sure your surface is always floured so it's not sticking. And again, you can see it really rolls out nicely. It's a very good workable crust. I said that, it's sticking. There we go, that'll be better. Okay, so now what we need is it big enough to go over this mound. That should pretty much do it there. I'm going to do mine kind of basic. I'm not going to do lattice. There we go. All right, so now we're going to combine. We'll tuck this under what's already there. Get a good seal. And then I'll be able to pop it in the oven. And it bakes for a long time, so it's going to go in the oven. I have the oven right now set at 400 degrees. So I put it in initially at 400 degrees. And then it bakes for a while at that. And then we turn the temperature down to 375 and finish baking it at that. So I'm just tucking it all under. We'll go back through and we'll make the edges pretty again. That's how you do it when you're doing a single layer, but when you're doing a double layer like this, then you really don't do that part until it's all closed up. So now I go through. And do this. And again, I'm not worried about perfection by any means. And you don't have to either. We just want it to taste good. That's our biggest priority. Flakiness is good too. Okay. And again, my other obstacle is I have these long nails that aren't really made for making pies, but that's what we're doing. Okay. So then I put in a couple of vents. Got a vent your pie. The steam out. So the other thing I have is a sheet pan in the oven. I'll set this right on the sheet pan that's preheated as well, just to just to help the bottom crust really crisp up so that the liquid from the apples as they cook doesn't make it soggy. So I put a sheet pan in at 400 degrees. I got that nice and hot. I'll put this directly onto it. We're gonna leave it there for 40 minutes. Then we're gonna turn the oven temperature down to 375, and we'll do that for 20 minutes. So we're gonna do that now. Okay, so we're back. The pie is done. It baked for a little bit over an hour actually. And what I do is I look for the liquid to start sort of bubbling around the edges, coming up through the top slits, things like that. And then I'll take the temperature of it, the internal temperature. I'll put a thermometer right in. You can see it's just a thermometer like that. Put it right in. You want that to be pretty close to 200 degrees internal temperature, and then you'll know that your apples are well cooked. So that's it. It now cools for the next hour to 2 hours. Takes a while, maybe closer to an hour if you want to eat it warm, 2 hours if you want to eat it room temperature. So that's it. That's our pie. And hopefully you were able to watch the process, learn some things, and give it a try yourself. Thanks.